My name's Logan Carter. I'm 29, a podcast producer who built my career from a beat up laptop and a spare closet. I wasn't the golden child, just the forgotten one, the joke at family dinners. But what my family didn't know was that the house they used to humiliate me in, the one they claimed as their kingdom, legally it belonged to me. And I was done playing the quiet son. Before I tell you how I ended up handing eviction papers to my own parents on the same porch they exiled me from, leave a comment and tell me, what's the most toxic thing your family ever said to you? And how did you survive it? And hit subscribe if you've ever had to rebuild your life from silence and pain. I pulled up to the Carter house in my aging Civic, its exhaust purring low beneath the quiet hum of suburban perfection. Across the street, behind laced curtains, I caught a flicker of Mrs. Adler's silhouette, frozen like a moth in a dusty window frame. She always noticed me. Noticed when I came alone. Noticed when I didn't come at all. Tonight, she would witness the end. The porch lights cast a soft glow over the white columns and the freshly trimmed hedges. The Carter house always looked like a postcard, one of those you'd buy in a gift shop and never send. I hesitated at the door. My phone still had the group text open. Dinner at 6. Don't be late. No excuses this time. Mom. There was no question. Only instruction. Inside, the scent of rosemary chicken and polished wood collided with tension so thick it hung like humidity. The dining room was lit with warm bulbs and set like a Pottery Barn catalog. Too curated. Too perfect. My chair at the far end of the table was always there, but never really for me. Logan, my mother said, not looking up from the silverware she was repositioning by 2 millimeters. Nice of you to finally show up. I forced a smile, slipping into the chair as she poured herself wine. Brandon was already mid-sentence, laughing too loudly about his new smart fridge. It talks to me now, like a real assistant. And thanks to Mom and Dad, paid in full, baby. He raised his glass like a champion returning from battle. Dad smirked, swirling his own drink. We just wanted one of our sons to live up to potential. And he has. I felt the words like needles under my skin, but I stayed quiet. That was always the rule. If you didn't want to feed the fire, don't breathe. Grandpa Walter once told me years ago during one of these Sunday rituals, the day they stop pretending to love you is the day you stop pretending to belong. He'd sit at the same table, chewing slowly, watching everyone with those eyes that had seen war and worse. His own blood tearing itself apart with smiles on their faces. Brandon droned on about granite countertops. I tried to chime in, mentioned a podcast I'd produced hitting 100K downloads. Oh, Mom said with a wrinkle of her nose. That internet thing you do? How's that? Hobby. Holding steady, I said, letting the words fall limp between us. Silence bloomed for a moment, heavy like the hush before thunder. Then Mom put her glass down, the sound of it striking the wood like a gavel. She turned to me, her voice clear and cold. You've always been the anchor dragging us down, Logan. Brandon snorted. Classic Logan. Dad didn't blink. To the only one worth saving, he said, raising his glass toward Brandon as if I'd ceased existing. It didn't sting. It didn't even burn. It hollowed. I stood slowly, my chair scraped the floor with a finality that felt like a bell toll. I looked at each of them. Not with anger, not with sadness. Just release. Thanks, I said, for finally burying what was left. And I walked out. The front door clicked shut behind me, soft as breath. No one followed me out. Not even the dog. That silence was louder than anything they'd ever said to me. The heater clicked once, then went silent again, as if even the house knew not to intrude. Eric's guest room was spare. Just a mattress on a low frame, a nightstand with no lamp, and a chair that leaned slightly to the left. The walls were bare. The air carried a chill that stuck to my skin like shame. I hadn't changed clothes since the dinner. I hadn't needed to. There was nowhere to go. Eric didn't say much when I showed up that night. Just handed me a spare key, left a folded blanket at the foot of the bed, and returned to whatever quiet life he kept going without chaos like mine. He knew me too well to ask if I was okay. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in the room. It hummed against the stillness. I stared at my inbox, mostly junk. Newsletters, promotional codes, reminders of a life that used to have direction. I scrolled without seeing, numb. Then something caught. A subject line half buried under spam, dated over a year ago. Title transfer, for your eyes only. From Miriam Grant. I sat up straighter. My fingers hovered over the trackpad, then clicked. The email opened slowly, like a sealed envelope being torn by hesitation. Dear Logan, as per Walter Carter's revised will, executed on file number 921F, the title of 1282 Briarwood Lane was transferred solely to your name. Your grandfather requested that this be shared only when you were ready. Respectfully, Miriam Grant Carter and Associates, Estate Division. For a moment, I thought it was a joke, a scam, some twisted spam from a bored bot. But Miriam Grant wasn't a stranger. She'd been Grandpa Walter's estate lawyer for years. She'd come to the house after his funeral, patted my shoulder gently, then disappeared. My breath caught somewhere between disbelief and something else. Rage? Relief? I couldn't name it. I dialed the number listed at the bottom of the email. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was soft but crisp, like someone who chose every word with the care of a surgeon. Logan, she said. I was hoping you'd call. Your grandfather trusted you'd find it, when the time was right. Why now? I asked. Why, hide it? It wasn't hidden, she replied gently. He left it where only you would find it, when you needed it most. Silence hung between us. So it's real? I asked. It's yours. It always was. I can send over the official documents again. If you'd like, I can also prepare the eviction notices. Eviction. The word bloomed in my mind like ink dropped into water. They'll fight it, I murmured. They'll lose, she said. Walter's instructions were airtight. The house legally belongs to you. I thanked her. Hung up. Stared at the screen as her words echoed. It's yours. I stood and crossed the room slowly. The floor creaked with every step. In the mirror above the dresser, I looked at myself for the first time in what felt like months. My eyes were tired, ringed with bruised shadows. But something inside had shifted. For once, the reflection didn't flinch. It's mine, I whispered. It's always been mine. I pulled out the printer Eric kept in the hall closet, fed in paper, watched as the documents slid out one by one, black ink on white truth. Legal, binding, final. I pressed each page flat with my palms. The Carter house. The house they mocked me in. The house they stole from. The house they made me feel small inside. That house was mine. No plans, no schemes, no melodrama. Just the law. Just timing. Just silence. I turned back toward the mirror. My jaw was still. My hands were steady. The tremble in my chest had gone still. 3 days, I said aloud. I'll give them what they gave me. No notice, no care, no grace. The morning was disgustingly peaceful. Blue sky without blemish. Birds too loud. Lawnmowers humming like a well-oiled lie. Even the hedges seemed trimmed into perfection, like the neighborhood had agreed to dress up for drama. I stood in front of Carter House wearing a hoodie zipped to the chin and jeans stiff from a lack of washing. My shoes scuffed the pavement as I approached the steps, a plain manila folder tucked under my arm. Law. Ink on paper. The kind that doesn't blink when they scream. The porch creaked beneath me just like it did the last time I stood there. Before Mom's words tore through me like rusted nails. That day, they exiled me with insults. Today, I had the deed. I pressed the doorbell. Inside, muffled voices. Footsteps. The sound of something glass clinking against wood. Susan Carter opened the door wearing pearls like armor and a smile too sharp to be real. So you're back? She chirped, like nothing had happened. You can come in, but don't track dirt. I held out the folder. She blinked. Her hand faltered. What's this? This is a legal notice, I said, voice calm as glass. You have 72 hours to leave the property. Behind her, Douglas shuffled into view, belt undone, holding a coffee mug that probably hadn't held coffee in a decade. What the hell is this? He asked. The house, I said. It belongs to me. Grandpa made sure of that. He barked out a laugh, dry and dismissive. Get real, Logan. What, you forged something off the internet? Susan snapped the folder open. She skimmed the top page, then the next. Her face began to lose color in pieces. Walter, never, he wouldn't do this. He did, I replied. A year before he passed. Quietly. Legally. Brandon came thudding down the stairs in gym shorts and bravado. You serious with this eviction crap? He asked, snatching the papers from Susan's hands. He read faster than I thought he could. His face didn't change until page 3. Then it fell. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice cracked like a windshield under stress. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Miriam's text buzzed in my pocket. Let me type back 2 words. It's done. Susan looked at me like I was a stranger who had kicked down her door. You're not really doing this, she hissed. This is cruel. Grandpa would hate this. I looked at her, steady. He planned for this. He knew exactly what you'd do. For a second, silence held the room like static. Then, she slapped me. It wasn't shocking. It was desperate. The kind of slap you use when you run out of, I said softly, is me not being your anchor anymore. She stepped back. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Douglas looked at his wife, then at me, like he'd seen a ghost take shape. I turned and walked away. The door slammed behind me, loud and final. Across the street, Mrs. Adler stood on her porch, arms folded, gaze steady. As I passed, she gave a subtle nod. Not approval, not pity. Just acknowledgement. Like someone who'd seen too much and said too little. And for once, it wasn't me leaving in shame. They used to call me dramatically. Funny how quiet they get when it's their furniture on the lawn. The neighborhood had that strange hum of curiosity. Too many windows cracked open, too many cars parked just a little too close. You could feel the tension floating above the Carter lawn like fog. Except this time, the fog wasn't metaphor. It was cardboard, dust, and 20 years of entitled clutter being hauled into the light. 2 moving trucks idled in front of the house. The logo on the side read, Evict and Shift Company, a name that didn't bother softening the truth. 4 men in matching gray uniforms moved quickly, methodically. Like this wasn't their first humiliation rodeo. I stood with my arms crossed, watching calmly from the curb. No sunglasses, no theatrics, just stillness. Because the more still you are, the louder their chaos feels. Douglas burst through the front door, red-faced and sputtering, dragging a box labeled, Crystal, Do Not Drop. He looked like a man drowning in his own living room. You think this makes you powerful? He snapped. This is petty. It's disgusting. I nodded slowly. You're right. And legal. He lunged forward, waving a paper in my face. A printed email from someone I'd never heard of. Some pathetic last-ditch theory that Grandpa's will was forged or coerced. I reached into my folder again, pulled out the title deed. Miriam had stapled the full chain of custody behind it just for this moment. Would you like me to read it aloud? I asked. He swatted it away, then turned and bellowed up the stairs. Brandon, get down here, now! Brandon stomped out the front door seconds later, shirtless, wearing sweatpants and rage. You're dead to me, he said, chest puffed. You want to humiliate us? Fine. But don't think this makes you better. You'll always be the screw-up. He stepped too close. Back up, I said quietly. Or what? That would be trespassing. He looked around and saw them. Phones, lenses, neighbors standing on their porches like attendees to a live drama they didn't pay for. One woman held her phone up steadily, not hiding it. Brandon lunged toward her. "Hey, put that down." Mrs. Adler, for the first time in her 74 years of peeking through curtains, stepped off her porch. "You lay a hand on her, Brandon, and I'll personally file the police report," she said, voice like gravel and gospel. Brandon froze. His fists curled, then dropped. Susan sat on the steps now, unmoving, her makeup smeared like war paint. "You're tearing this family apart," she wailed. Mrs. Adler looked over, calm and unblinking. "No, he's just finishing what you started." A silence followed, deep and awkward. No one corrected her. No one dared. The movers carried out a glass table I remembered breaking my chin on when I was 7. It looked so much smaller now, and so did they. All of them. Stripped of control, power, illusion. Eric walked up quietly, handed me a coffee. Black, hot, dependable. "You good?" he asked. I nodded. I didn't say thanks. He didn't need me to. From inside, something crashed, loud and ceramic. Douglas had hurled a coffee mug at the wall, the same wall that still held my 3rd grade spelling bee photo. A hairline crack ran straight through the drywall now. I didn't blink. "If you break anything else," I said, sipping the coffee, "I'll add it to the damage bill." He went silent. One by one, their possessions stacked on the lawn. Awards, coats, empty picture frames that once held their curated version of family. By sunset, their past was stacked on the lawn, and I was inside changing the locks. Victory isn't loud. It's the silence when no one calls you worthless anymore. The house groaned softly as the morning sun crept through the windows, casting long shadows across bare walls and newly cleaned floors. I stood in the living room, hands in my pockets, surrounded by space that finally felt mine. Not just legally, not just on paper, but in the breath I took and the weight I didn't carry anymore. The coffee table was gone. So was Brandon's squat rack and the obnoxiously large treadmill he never used. I pushed the last remaining box, labeled Carter Trophies, toward the front door with my foot. Dust motes danced in the light like ghosts trying to decide whether to stay or go. I moved through the rooms slowly. The stairs creaked the same way they had when I was 13, sneaking back in after midnight. But the sound didn't feel accusatory anymore. It was just old wood doing its job. In the kitchen, I stood in front of the fridge where Susan used to stick her color-coded meal plans and passive-aggressive notes. "You forgot the trash again. You call this clean? Why can't you be more like Brandon?" All gone now. Just smooth silver and a magnet shaped like a cactus. I left that one. Upstairs, I found myself in my old bedroom. The posters had been stripped, the furniture changed, but I could still see the outline on the wall where I used to tape up comic book pages. The floor had that familiar dip near the closet door. My voice caught in my throat. I sat on the edge of the bed, not mine, not yet, and looked around. The silence wasn't heavy. It wasn't sad. It was space. Breathing space. My phone buzzed. Voicemail. One new. Susan Carter. I played it on speaker. Sobs. "Logan, we're in a motel, but they're full tonight. We slept in the car. Brandon's angry. Douglas hasn't spoken since Tuesday. She inhaled shakily. "I never thought you'd really go through with it. You made your point. You can stop now." I hit delete. A new message appeared almost instantly. "Brandon, we're family. Doesn't that mean anything?" I read it. Then locked my phone and placed it face down on the windowsill. Eric came in through the front door, arms full of... I stared at the color for a second, then nodded. "Let's make it mine." He gave me a soft smile and went to unload the supplies. My laptop was open on the kitchen counter. A new email sat unread. From Miriam Grant. Subject, final confirmation, title secured. I clicked it. Legal jargon, clean title, transfer recorded, no contest filed. Then at the bottom, one attachment. Walter, letter.pdf. I opened it, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. The scan showed Walter's careful handwriting, the same elegant curves he used when labeling jars in the basement. Logan, if you're reading this, it means you chose to stop being afraid. That's all I ever wanted from you. They never saw you. But I did. I always did. This house isn't the reward. You are. Love, Grandpa. I folded the laptop slowly, pressed my fingers against my eyelids. But there were no tears. Just this vast, aching quiet inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done, but not impossible. Mailbox, gloved hands pressing down soft roots, coaxing them into earth that had never once felt like it belonged to me. Until now. Orange marigolds and a row of white alyssum. Nothing fancy, just something alive. Something chosen. The morning sun warmed the back of my neck as I adjusted the stones around the flower bed. Careful, deliberate. Inside the house, the new security system chirped quietly. A camera blinked awake. I tapped the screen on my phone and saw them. Susan pacing the sidewalk in front of the house like a ghost trapped in a loop. Her hair was frizzed, her arms folded tightly across her chest, yet. Susan took a breath and stepped forward, knocking once. Soft, almost polite. Then, she just stood there. Not yelling, not demanding, just crying. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Brandon. Or sorry, can we talk? I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I deleted the thread. Eric's voice floated from the porch. You going to say anything? No, I said, wiping dirt off my gloves. They've said enough for both of us. He nodded, then gestured toward the mailbox. Nice touch. It was time. We stood for a moment, watching the wind ruffle the petals. Then he gave my shoulder a light squeeze and walked back inside. I lingered by the gate, letting the breeze settle the silence. The house behind me didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a beginning. Inside, the mantel above the fireplace held only one object now. A small, tarnished brass key with the initials WC engraved near the top. The last thing Grandpa ever gave me. He'd slipped it into my palm years ago, when no one else was watching. This house will be yours one day, he'd whispered, but not if you let them steal it with guilt. I placed the key on the mantel this morning, not to claim ownership, but to honor the one person who saw me before I knew how to see myself. I walked to the front door. From the window, I could still see Susan standing there, unmoving. I pulled the curtain shut. The light dimmed slightly. Then, slowly, I turned the lock, metal sliding into place with a satisfying finality. They used to own this house. They used to own me. Now, they don't even get a view inside. Beneath the quiet hum of a locked door and the freshly planted garden, a different kind of justice had bloomed, one not shouted but felt. The family that once mocked him from their throne of power now stood outside, powerless, watching the house they no longer controlled. Power had shifted, not through vengeance, but through precision, patience, and the strength to walk away without looking back. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes reclaiming what's yours isn't about revenge. It's about finally refusing to be erased.
My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28 years old, and up until a few months ago, I lived what most people would probably call a very ordinary life. I worked as a preschool teacher at Little Sprouts Academy, spent my evenings grading coloring sheets or preparing craft projects, and came home to a tiny one-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio. My paycheck barely covered the rent, groceries, and gas for my 10-year-old sedan, but I didn't complain. Teaching young children gave me a sense of purpose and joy that money couldn't buy. Every morning, when I walked into my classroom and heard little voices shout, "Miss Carter," with arms outstretched for hugs, I felt rich in a way my bank account could never reflect. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. But outside the classroom, life felt much emptier. My parents, Charles and Diane, were technically present throughout my childhood, but emotionally, they might as well have been strangers. My father buried himself in 60-hour work weeks, chasing promotion after promotion in the corporate world. He carried his success like a badge, but there was always a coldness in his eyes when he looked at me, like I was a project he never had time to finish. My mother, Diane, was no better. Her entire life revolved around climbing social ladders, hosting